View from the Gutters, episode 39. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Supermarket, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 4705. Alright, this is 39, right?
Welcome to View from the Gutters.
So,
Episode,
it is
episode 39. I'm Andrew Sharp.
I'm Joe Preddy.
I'm Matt McGinnis.
I'm Tobiah Panchin.
I'm Cade Reynolds, and I totally talked over the beginning of the introduction.
We'll cut you out.
Why are none of the mics plugged in?
Don't Joe, don't look at that. Don't worry about it.
That's just yours, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, mine is his.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, he's just gonna edit himself back in later.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking. I'm going solo. Like
See, he can just have his own opinions that he records later and then puts our positive responses after them. So it sounds like we all agree with
I
it.
thought this. Yes. I'm just like,
You were right.
I
agree.
You are right. Like, clearly that was spliced together.
That's particularly funny because we spent the 10 minutes before we started recording screaming at each other over Grand Theft Auto 5.
And the hilarious thing is, outside the window right now, there's a sailboat that looks very similar to one I jacked the other day in GTA 5, and it's really taking a considerable amount of willpower not to run down the bank into the water and go and sail
And
that
punch
boat.
out the windows on your way out.
Oh, totally, yeah.
You jump through the window.
I
Jump
Why
through the windows, down the bank.
I call that the Katamari Damacy effect. Because if you play Katamari long enough, your brain will just start like thinking about like rolling shit up. Just
true.
all the time. Like you're
look
driving
at
down your road
everything.
and it's like, if I steer into that telephone pole, I could totally grab that. I think everybody's had that. Like you do something long enough and your brain just starts thinking about it.
The worst is the Guitar Hero, which I never play because it makes me sick to my stomach. Also, it's awful. But the bars moving up the screen, if you look away from the screen after a while, the whole room is like moving upwards, and you're like, or down or something.
I went to get gas at Cade the other day, and some guy like totally backed up and did like a 3-point turn right in front of me when he could have just driven through and like gone around. And I was like, this is my problem with Grand Theft Auto 5, is that if I was playing that, I would just shoot him. Then I would shoot everybody else at the gas station. Then I would blow up the gas station.
Yeah.
And I can't do that in real life, and it's frustrating to me.
Yeah, it would make real life more enjoyable.
It really would.
No consequences.
Yeah, just go and hide in
Respawn.
the bush.
Everybody gets to respawn.
Just go and hide in a bush.
Yeah,
and
if there was infinite respawns, then that would be okay. It's like, I just got shot in the head. Oh, well, I'll respawn and go shoot that guy in the head.
I just bicycled off a mountain.
That was fun. No, I love
$5,000. I'm good.
It was Saints Row 3 the first time I was playing it, and I didn't realize, or maybe it was Saints Row 2, and I didn't realize that the backpack was what allowed you to parachute off of stuff. So I had taken my backpack off because I had like upgraded my wardrobe into a suit, and I was like, I don't need a backpack with that. And I jumped out of an airplane, and I was like, why is it not giving me the parachute option? And it like didn't give it to me, and my guy just plummets from the sky, and I have to watch him fall all the way down and just crash into the pavement.
Thing happened to me. I had to kill this guy on the roof of a construction project, and then afterwards they give you a parachute, and I jumped off, but I landed on another roof of a building that was too high, and I'm like, well, there's no fucking way off, so I just had to jump off and die. But it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean,
with infinite respawn, I would definitely jump off a lot of more.
The thing that made it even more funny was that you were going along the edge looking for a
I
way
was
down,
looking,
and then you just accidentally fell.
I just accidentally ran off the ledge. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Supermarket.
Yeah. So you recommended it, Matt?
Yep.
What would you...
Basically, I recommended it just because it was a quick, fun read. It was cool because it was Brian Wood. It was a character that I enjoyed, and it was a premise that I thought was kind of unique. On top of that, too, I really liked the art. I think the art was really of everything what stood out to me the most. The story was good. I mean, it's not the best story ever, but every page I looked at, there was something that I really, really liked about the art. So that was kind of what grabbed it for me. And also, it's the kind of book that it's not an all ages book, but definitely like someone probably 13 and above, maybe a little bit older than that. Like a tween to a teen type book. I think it's a really good kind of recommendation for someone like that. So that's that. That's what I thought.
The art really is absolutely gorgeous. I love it so much. Like, I mean, the line work obviously, but the colors are so vivid and varied. Like, a lot of the comics that we've talked about, the color palette, and they often end up being kind of monochrome.
Yeah.
You know, lots of, like, okay, this page is all green. And this book isn't like that at all. Like, every single page is just this, like, rainbow of different colors, you know. And pinks and orange and green and blue everywhere.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of pinks and oranges and, like, purples in there. And it almost reminded me of the type of color palette that they use in, like, Watchmen, where it's like the kind of the alternate colors that you don't see a lot in comics.
Yeah, it's very different from what we normally get.
And that was what grabbed me about the book when I first pulled it off the shelf.
And like, I really loved this comic right off the bat. Like, within the first couple of pages, like, the main character really won me, and I loved where it was going, and it was a lot of fun. And I got to the end of the second issue, and then the second half made no fucking sense. Like, the story just goes completely off the rails, and I have no fucking clue what's going on or why it's happening. Because, like, there's the whole
which
plot
might have been the point, knowing Brian Wood.
I haven't read anything by Brian Wood before, but, like, the whole plot is that her parents have, like, all this money that they got from these two different mafias somehow that's in the safe that only she can open. But, like, they don't explain, like, how they got the money or why she can only open the safe, or, like, there's just, it's, all this stuff is going on that just does not get explained at all, and I had no idea what was going on.
I mean, I agree with you that I mean, if I have a criticism of this book, it's that it wraps up too quickly. I have no problem understanding any of I'm not sure why you had that problem. I think it's all pretty much laid out there, what happened. They're both in the mafia, their respective mafias. They both stole money when they found out the mother was pregnant. And she's the key to the safe. She opens it using her biosignature, which is her blood signature and her DNA that's coded on that thing. And what's in the safe is never... it's... I mean, that's kind of the part where it loses it, right? Which is... And this is a spoiler, so if you haven't read it or you don't want to hear it... I mean, we advertise that, but I'll just give you a second. Okay, that's more than enough time. It's basically this very Tyler Durden-esque, get rid of all the debt, everybody is equal thing. And I'm like, okay. I don't know that I'm going with you on that. I didn't read it as
much like that, or as much as, like, they took all this illegal crime money, and to launder it, they just... I mean, not to launder it, but to get rid of it, they just deposited it into a bunch of, like, all the random citizens. It's not, like, equally in debt. Like, they didn't steal from the rich and, like, give it to the poor. They just, like, got rid of the money, which ended the mafia, sort of.
Yeah, I
mean, she's
like,
it didn't fix anything, really.
Yeah,
that was the wrap up.
For me, like, yeah, when that happened, I was kind of like, what? But then when she wraps it up by basically saying it didn't really. I mean, eventually things kind of reset themselves. But then mafia was, the Yakuza and the porno suites were never really able to recover.
Right.
Like that was what I needed to kind of finish it.
Yeah.
And I agree that I think that it wraps up a little too quick. Maybe another couple issues to flush some things out.
It's only 4 issues.
Yeah,
I think 6 issues would have been a sweet spot for this.
Yeah, I really felt like it would have, kind of flushed it out great. But I mean, that last little bit on it kind of made it okay. I think in my mind. So too.
I liked that. At the end of the story, I was like, how is this going to end? Because those last 2 issues, like Toby said, are like, it's just so quick.
Yeah,
like stuff is happening so fast.
You can kind of figure out what's going on.
It.
And you can infer it,
right?
But it's not stated on the page, and like all this stuff is just kind of happening and not being explained.
And by seeing it, because you're being told the story through the main character's point of view, like Pella. She doesn't know, and like anything that's going on, and she's getting like snippets of information from these video recordings from her father, and so you're forced to kind of like make an inference that like, okay, Pella's dad hid the money with the Yakuza in the safe, but it's money that he like put all the Yakuza money and all the porno suite money into one account. I think what
somehow. It is they understand that they are eventually going to figure out what happened and find them. They understand that Della is going to be in trouble. So,
Pella.
I thought at first it was Pella, but I swear to God that's a D.
I went back and forth.
If it's a P, then it is the shortest tale on a P I've ever seen.
It's definitely Pell. That's a P.
I don't think that's a P.
Yeah, it's a P.
It's a P.
It's just the
Anyways.
pages they're compressed because it's smaller than a comic book size. So when they were coming out in single issues, they were a bit bigger than they are now. So now the words are much smaller. It's a short tale.
Whatever the frigger name was. Regardless. This is all a plan to basically get the porno suites and the Yakuza to be complicit in their own demise, right? It's like they know that they can only tell her so much or something. And that's kind of the thing where an extra issue would have been really great.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it
because
really would have
they
been
didn't-
nice to have a layout issue where Della has some better idea of what's going on, because while keeping your main character very caught up in what's happening, and so it's kind of disorienting, is a great narrative technique, and I think it gets around the unreliable narrator thing. It's also, you need room. You need to have that moment where the character goes, this is what's going on.
And
Right.
I
And
would
it
have,
can't be the last 2 pages of the book.
I would have liked for you to see more from her perspective. Like, if I wish that there were more moments where she was figuring things out, and like maybe have. I guess I just feel like there could have been more story involving her trying to figure out what was going on.
Well, I feel like the first part of the third act is gone. It's pretty much
Yeah.
The first and second parts are there, but I feel like the first part of the third act is missing, and because of that, the last part lacks.
Well,
I agree with that, definitely. That sounds right.
And I think what should have happened, and I don't know, this is like reading into it, but I think what would have been nice is that extra issue that she figures out what's going on, and then she makes a plan, and then that plan is carried out, so that she, as a character, like can kind of be an active part of the story for the first time.
Honestly,
even
if I had my druthers, I would have made this a 12-issue series. I would have like scrapped basically the plot of the 4th issue and like really expanded the series and done like a more expansive ending,
Right.
And maybe change things up a little bit.
Right, but
There's a lot more there in the world and the setting that he creates that just does not get acted upon at all.
See, I feel like if it had been like 12 issues, I would have put a couple issues at the beginning to set up her parents more and set her up a little bit.
Absolutely. Like there's so much
And
more
then-
that you could have done to fill out the story. Like in 4 issues, it feels like he just did not have enough space to tell the whole story the way it should have been told.
Yeah. Reading more Brian Wood and kind of knowing more of his style, like it does seem like it's something where he had this great idea, and they're like, "All right, you got 4 issues," and he's like, "Well, shit," and, kind of made it happen. And that being said, it hurts it some, but I still liked it.
I would never tell anybody not to read this. And a big part of it is, I have to agree with everybody, is that it is stunning, and the art is...
the art is incredibly stunning, and I would love for this to be like an anime.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it live action because I think you would lose a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Losing the art style, because it adds so much to this series. Like it really is.
There's
so
a page that just shows the
good.
city. I can't remember what page. Also, it has page numbers, which is a little thing, but it's amazing.
I'm going to reference a couple of them in a bit here.
Yeah, who published this? It's
IDW.
IDW. Yeah, they do such good work.
And I just heard that IDW is apparently opening a TV department within their company to I guess do development.
Nice,
awesome.
Which this would be so good.
The city is page 16 of the first issue.
And it's
I think
such an amazing job of making it feel claustrophobic and very cyberpunk, not like super futuristic like Transmet, but I mean, it feels very like right out of a William Gibson novel, which is it really does. Really like.
And it also, like, if you liked King City, like the idea of this kind of like it's not as fantastic sci-fi, but it's like kind
that's
of
what I was saying.
real
Like I'd
city.
like 8 more issues, so they could do a couple of issues of just her in the city, like trying to find her feet, maybe, or whatever.
I think,
but actually get to learn about the city itself.
And I think Toby's totally right about this would make a great animated series because the color palette is phenomenal, and it's you couldn't replicate that in live action. I don't think.
No.
It would come off as cartoonish. I think if you really tried to do it right.
Yeah, but the color palette is amazing. I love the really heavy line weight in the art style. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
and the Yakuza dude getting blown away on
Yeah.
64.
such an amazing panel.
That
Oh
panel
my
was
God.
probably my favorite panel in the entire.
And
Yeah.
I love the way that the characters are like just a little bit off model for what you would think of as like realistic styling.
Yeah.
Like they're not cartoonish, but they're just a little bit like distorted.
A little exaggerated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when there's a tall, thin person, like they're very tall and thin.
It reminds me a lot of like Chew, the art style.
Yeah.
But not quite as cartoony.
Yeah.
And the faces are really interesting too. Like the Yakuza guys' faces are all.
When they show all the Yakuza guys and they have the
they're
different, they have the
super-
different
yeah.
things. Like they've got the bandana over the eye and the.
I was gonna say like Pella's face throughout this is like very, very expressive, and you get certain panels where like her face is just very animated, and it adds a lot of emotional depth to the story.
I think it really succeeds in having that kind of like kung fu chop sake feeling as well, with like the panels and the quick cuts and like the close up on like just the top part of the head with the eyes, and then you see like
There's the
sword,
scene
one
where
of them.
she's running from the Yakuza, and there's like good action panel. There's an establishing panel, then there's a couple good action panels,
Very
and then there's some
cinematic.
close-ups of like her face, and then like the guy who's chasing her with the gold grill, and it's just like it's very cinematic in his approach to panel layout.
One of the things I wanted to mention while we're talking about the art is the car chase scene from pages 74 to 80 in the trade is very, very well done. It feels like an actual car chase, which is really hard to do in...
Yeah, we talked about that when we were talking about Hawkeye.
Yeah.
That it's really difficult to do in comic books.
Yeah.
And this one, with her Honda Civic, or Beta's Honda Civic that's souped up, it's very well done.
Yeah.
Very realistic. And also in that, I wanted to mention the backwards lettering that goes alongside the car that I think is really amazing. Because it's like the viewpoint, if it had been a different viewpoint, the sound effect would have been correct. But because you're looking at the car straight on,
it
the
gives it
view
a
is
sense
backwards.
of motion almost.
Yeah. That's cool. I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
No,
really...
there's a lot of... I feel like... I can't remember the artist's name.
Kristian Donaldson. Is it
I-
Christian? It's Kristen.
Was it Kristen?
I wasn't sure if it was Kristen or Christian.
No, that's Christian.
Okay.
The IAN.
Yeah.
So it feels very... There's I feel like there's definitely like a manga influence here going. This person is familiar with that more Eastern art style, and he definitely adds that. So the motion is very motiony. The car scene also has the distinction of being something. I feel like there's a lot this book does right, and I feel one of the main things is that I never feel like Pella loses her agency. I feel like she gets caught up in things, and I think it's a very small step from there to damsel in distress, or kind of like, oh, I'm just at the mercy of events. And I feel like she steps up, which is nice, because one of the things I really like about this is that she's not like Kung Fu Girl. She's not like secretly trained. She doesn't pull out a sword or nunchucks. She's like running. She's scared. She doesn't know what to do. And even when she's driving, that has more to do with her experience just as a commuter than it does as her being like badass racer girl,
Right.
So
she's not like, I used to street race at night.
yeah,
You're like,
right?
where did that
Like,
come from?
I'm
Like,
secretly learning ninja skills from my janitor.
Right.
It's just like
it just,
Yeah,
it feels very realistic, and it feels like her reactions are good reactions.
Which,
like you can get behind what she's doing because you're like, that makes sense. I would do that. Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
Do this. She's smart. She doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and she's usually one step ahead of even the people who are trying to help her, which is really cool. And I think that when we were talking about like if you expanded it, the one scene of like her formulating a plan to take down the Yakuza
would
have been really nice, because that's what happens, and I just feel like
See, I don't know Sorry. I don't know if I would have wanted her to do the plan, but I would have liked to just see more of like her figuring out what her parents' plan was and put that into motion.
Yeah.
I don't feel that it had to be her plan, but I feel that she should have, or that it shouldn't have all come as a surprise.
Yeah.
The one other thing that seemed a little bit off to me is, okay, so her parents both double-crossed their respective organized crime families, and then they moved like a couple miles into the suburbs outside of the city that the Yakuza control.
Yeah,
You'd think that they would go a little bit further than that.
Yeah, it wasn't clear how far away they were.
Well, I think in the first issue, like you see the overhead shot of her suburb, and then you can see the city in the distance. Like,
Oh, right, yeah.
it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like it's...
Well, it's like New Jersey to New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Well, it's
also...
not even
Well,
that.
it's
that
like Hoboken to New York.
If you
And-
live in... no, because Hoboken is in New York.
And also-
Well, it's
like-
across the river.
Well, it's across the river. It's more like... I feel like this is more like something, not even like Yonkers, but
do we
like
do we
in
really
New
need
York.
to figure out which town?
Yeah.
No. What I'm
Yeah,
saying
it's
is
really
that
important.
when you live in the suburbs outside of a city, that doesn't mean you have anything to do with that city. And as a matter of fact, usually it means you don't.
What I think is really interesting, though, is that they kept an apartment in that city.
Yeah.
That, to me, was the part where I was like, why would you keep a safe house in your enemy's territory? Like,
Because that's the last place they're going to look for you. Haven't you ever
Or
seen
the
a movie?
first
Well,
place they're going to find
No,
you.
no,
'cause
no.
they're gonna
But they even-
accidentally
but
let
That's
you
not
in.
how
there.
this trope works. That's not how this trope works.
But I mean, even later in the comic, they talk about how when she's staying at the hotel under her name, with the money that she got
Yeah.
from her parents, when Beta finds her, he says they haven't found her because they expect her to be
In the slums.
in the slums.
Right.
Well, and that's one of the
So-
things this book did that I really liked is they got rid of the omniscient supervillains and replaced them with just like pretty much low level like Yakuza thugs. And because I hate that shit. I hate when I'm watching a movie or reading a comic book and it's like, oh, we'll go here. They'll never find us. No, we found you. Did you really think you can? I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm now out of the story.
Well,
I'm
and
now walking away from your story.
When you give a villain too much power, when they fail, it doesn't feel realistic.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
when they reveal their final goals and they're like...
Not as
Well, because
Not as grand as they should be for that power
It's-
level. Like, you can make mistakes.
It
I
does
mean,
the same. I feel like it has the same effect. If I had been reading this and Pella had been some kind of kung fu badass, then immediately I'm like, oh, there's going to be some big confrontation at the end, and she's going to kick everybody's ass because why wouldn't she? But
Right.
because she's not, because she's reacting to this in like a way I can relate to, I'm like curious. I don't know what she's going to do, and I'm actually asking myself that as the story goes along: is what is she like? How is she going to get out of this? And so when you have believable villains, it's like it's much more. It adds to that. It doesn't take
Right.
me out. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh well, shit. It's like you can outdrive them, you can outrun them, to a certain extent, but eventually, the net's going to close just because of sheer numbers.
Right.
And so I feel like that really nailed it in this case. Whereas if it had been it's like, do you know how hard it is to find one person in a city with like a population of 10 million people? That's like impossible.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's totally
You
easy.
could do it in like an afternoon.
I mean, I could probably do it in like an hour tops.
Right.
I feel like I could
Google
do it.
that shit.
You've read a lot of
Yeah.
Batman books.
Yeah. Well, and also Spencer, like detective books in general.
Yeah.
Like I would just go and ask people until one of them hit me, and then I would follow that person around until they discovered that they were the murderer.
I think it would take you more than an hour to find someone that would hit you, though. Because I think
That's
a lot of
probably true.
people you ask are going to be like, who? What? No, I've never seen that person before.
Well, and it's Seattle, so they'll probably just silently judge me or not talk to me at all.
They have,
But,
chai lattes to get back to.
Yeah, it's true. It's soy chai lattes.
Right.
I like chai.
I do too.
Nothing
Oh
wrong
no!
with
Hey! It's October. That would be a pumpkin spice chai
Oh, right.
latte.
Oh,
it.
right.
But it would
That's
have
the
to
only
be
reason
fair
I know the
trade.
season.
It doesn't
around
look
here.
like October outside,
It
to be
looks
fair.
beautiful. I wish that
No
we
season
had-
looks like any other season in Washington.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we should put up a
Okay,
video
that's what
feed.
I didn't.
I looked up Kristian Donaldson on Wikipedia just to confirm that it was in fact a guy and not a girl named Kristen, and I was just totally misreading.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are a dude.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good work.
Yes.
We enjoy your art.
Wow, I
fantastic.
can't believe that there's a man working in the comic book industry. That's just unbelievable to me.
No,
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being mean
No,
to Kristian Donaldson,
doesn't
who doesn't
exist.
exist.
No, totally. I think we've subverted heteronormativity. I think we're okay. We've.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think I'm always really. I think I'm highly critical of books that have a female main character because I think it's very easy to fall into tropes, and I don't ever feel like Pella falls into tropes. And I definitely think I have a 12-year-old, as I talked about all the time, and I think she would really, really enjoy this.
Yeah.
I really like the way that, and really, I feel like the ending being a little too quick is my only problem with it.
Yeah.
I really feel like several times my expectations were totally subverted in the best possible way. It was like, oh, now they're going to do, oh, they didn't do that. Oh, I like that. You know,
I definitely loved the first 2 issues.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right. Like because women are so often misrepresented in media in general, not just in comic books.
Western media. Specifically.
When you have a book like this with a perky blonde teenage main character, like you really do have to be critical of it and examine it closely. And one of the things I like about this comic is that she really does act like I would expect that kind of person to act.
Absolutely.
Like she's not, she's not like an airhead, like a ditzy blonde.
Yeah.
But she's not like this omniscient badass either.
Right.
Like she has opinions. She knows some stuff. She doesn't know some other stuff. Like bad shit happens and she's messed up about it, but she like tries to move on and do be strong and do what her parents wanted her to do. Like she really does feel like a real person.
I was really she as a character really grated on me in the first issue because all she's talking about is how like how messed up the system is, and I understand how the world works better than everybody else, but it's like, but that's how you would think if you were a teenager.
Exactly.
Right.
Right?
That's
Like,
what I mean.
how felt
Exactly.
when I was
Like
a teenager.
the
It's
fact that she's so opinionated and thinks that she's right about everything
Yeah.
and the people around her are morons is exactly how teenagers think.
No, and it's exactly how I thought when I was at it and still think. But I it's irritating to see
He's
somebody
slightly
else.
more entitled than that.
It's sort of irritating to watch that happen, like to get that spelled out of you, but it very quickly like launches into the main story.
Yeah.
And you lose track of her opinions.
I think one of the really good things that happens, which is a hard thing to do, is that her notions get quickly dispelled, and it's never. I never feel like this book is going, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. It's like I said, except at the end. Like for the most part, I'm totally there and willing to go with them, and I think it's a lot of fun.
I mean, we've picked on the ending quite a bit, but I do want to say that I don't think it was a horrible ending.
No,
I
much worse
think
endings.
that
Definitely.
I think that for what it was and for the 4 issues that he had, he told a really good story and did end it in a way that is believable. It's an ending that's, I mean, it's worthy of the book. It's just not what we wanted it to be because we're hypercritical and we wanted it to be 5 or 6 issues instead of 4 issues.
No, I mean, I definitely think that I think the ending feels hurt to me. I don't feel like it's the ending
like if you actually look at the very end. I mean, I guess the epilogue to the extent that it's the ending. It's 3 pages. Mm-hmm. It's barely 3 pages. It's like 2.5 pages.
It's the only time I feel in this book where it's being heavy-handed, and I feel like it's set up this way because, and it's partially because of how well they write Pella as a character. She never has that moment where she's like, we can totally fuck everybody over. We can totally like break the supermarket, because that's just, and I understand that part of that is a conceit of the book, like, but I feel like even one more issue where we're able to kind of see her process there would have made that ending much more powerful, because you would have been like, well, how is she going to do this? Well, and then, like, I understand like wanting to leave that out to build up suspense, and I think you can do both. I feel like there's more there in the ending. Now, is this the worst ending ever? God, no. I mean, I didn't like throw the book or like just be like, ah. I mean, I just feel like there's so much there in the beginning, and at the end, it just kind of is like, no, we're done. Yeah. And I really feel like
the pacing, which is our biggest complaint is that either where those extra issues end up it's not the issue. It's just that like a little bit more space would have helped either the beginning feel less rushed or the middle
more
less
pages.
rushed or just
I mean,
it was anticlimactic. You read it, and there really was no climax.
And what I felt was, I mean, kind of like what we were saying about if she came up with a plan, even if there was just a little piece where like she knew more about what she was doing when she pushed the button. Because she just kind of like, okay, my parents set up this plan, I'm pushing the button, and she does it, and then they're like, and the money's been redistributed,
right.
You know, I mean, at that point, she's been built up to essentially she's the main character, she's the hero of the story, you know, and when she just kind of does this act without really knowing the ramifications of it, it kind of takes away from the fact that she's making that decision. And if there was just a piece in there where they're like, this is what you could do, you know, or if they gave her almost the option where she could say, well, I can just take this money and go.
Yeah.
Or I can redistribute it and kind of, you know, break these people, you know, I feel like that would give it more weight. That would make you care about it more. And just that one little piece, I think, would take it from being a decent to good ending to being like the ending that I wanted for that book.
Which is the ending, I think. I mean, and you said the ending it deserved, and I think that's a good way of putting it. I think this book had an okay ending. I don't think it had the ending it deserved.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not, but I feel like it might not be the ending that it deserves, but it was solid, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, and we're sitting here dissecting this book, you know, just breaking it down. I mean, we're essentially saying we like this book, but this is of the things that we like. This is the thing that we like the least, and this is where we feel like there's the most.
And I actually did really like the ending. I thought that like, for what it was, I don't know how else it would have ended because
that was kind of where I was.
Yeah, I was reading issues 2 and 3, and I was like, man, there's like a lot going on here. I wonder how he's going to wrap this up in one more issue. Did I not get all the issues? Is it done? And when it wrapped up, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of an elegant solution to like get her out of the mafia's.
I guess as usual, I'm on the more critical end of the group. When by the time I got to the end of the second issue, I was like, oh man, I got to grab a copy of this for myself because I borrowed Matt's copy.
Yeah.
And then when I got to the end of the book, I was like, I'll pick this up, but not right away.
Yeah.
And I think you use a good word. I think the ending is an elegant idea that is somewhat inelegantly done.
It needed to be 10 pages instead of 2 pages.
Yeah. I want more. Like, I want to be concrete in the idea. I want Pella is a character that up until this point, we've been privy to her motivation, and like I said before, while I understand the idea of going in dark to that situation, if you're going to do that, then you need to pump up the end a little bit, because it felt much more of like an anime ending where you're just like, well, we've solved this problem, and I was like, let me rephrase that. I felt like it was the inverse of an anime ending, where anime normally ends on, well, we had this big battle and we fixed that. We're going to totally ignore all the other shit that's going on because we've done this one thing and now it's over and you don't get any more. I feel like it was the inverse of that, where it's like, well, we fixed the big problem, but all like the little details that would have made it kind of flesh it out, right? Like the shape is there. I just want more shape. I want to be able to look at it.
Well, yeah. And I think that although Pella gets really well categorized, like I think we all really are behind the fact that she's a good character, the side characters really suffer from the low page count too, because I think that one of the most interesting sets of characters in the story is the guy Beta who helps her and his girlfriend, because
which is a great scene.
There's a great scene in the car where she like essentially puts the moves on Beta, and right as his girlfriend shows up and she's like, who's that? And she's like, oh, that's my girlfriend. And it's like, and the look on her face is like priceless, perfect. But what I really like is I think that they're with those characters, the reason that she's not like resentful of that or in any way like weird around them is Beta is from the Yakuza family, and his girlfriend is from the porno suite, much like her parents were, and so like I think that there's definitely
and that, like that's another thing. Like it seems like there's a deliberate parallel being drawn there,
Right.
that nothing ever happens with.
Right, and she, at the end, the only conclusion we get is that she splits her inheritance with them. And
Right.
it's like,
Yeah,
I
and
wanted a little bit more. And I'm with Joe on that, where it's like, I would have liked those little character moments that you get at the end of a big story wrap up, where it's like, and now I know, like how these characters are doing, and I feel like there's some closure.
Yeah.
But overall, I think like for the page count that he had, and for the ending that happened, like I can still really enjoy the story. Like I can always wish for more, but I think that's a mark of a good universe and a good world that's built. Is like I just want more.
I would much rather say like this is really good for what it was, and I wish that I had more of it,
Right.
rather than well, this was all right, but it was kind of meandering, and
Yeah.
he, like
Well, to
like
say,
it should have been
yeah.
like. I'd rather say like this needed more space than it should have been shorter.
Yeah, and it's like
Well-
the Why the Last Man syndrome. Like I really like Why the Last Man, but I do feel like it's too long at points. Like
Yeah, the
that's my
ending
biggest
sucks.
complaint.
I would
We're not
I
talking
would
about
argue
this,
about
but-
that, but not on this episode.
Yeah, and it just like there are plenty of books I can come up with that I just think they're a bit too long. Like they're a little bit too. They wander. There's lulls in the pacing, and as an overall story arc, like they're not as strong. And so
Well, and
I think this is better.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a distinction between saying, like, I really like this, I wish there was more of it, and saying, this was really bad, there needed to be more of it.
Right.
I definitely feel like there's a big difference there. And I don't think this is bad at all. And if somebody came up and said, hey, what do you think about this? I'd be like, read it, because I mean, and I think the other cool thing, which is kind of what I want to touch on a little bit, is that I think it represents what's cool about independent, like indie comics and smaller, like indie publishers, which is that you can tell this little 4-issue story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be spun out into some huge IP, and it doesn't have to be like marketed and like,
fit into continuity.
And all this other bullshit, is that Brian Wood can just write these 4 issues and give you this great little product that's not that expensive and enjoyable.
Yeah.
And you're kind of happy with that, rather than having, well, where do I have to come in and blah 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 and all this, what happened here?
Also,
Why is there this?
The effect that this has on the industry is really strong too, because if a lot of people are talking about how good this little book is, with its very alternative art style, its very alternative characters, like a lead female character who's in her, early teens.
16,
like
yeah.
how many books do we see from Marvel and DC that have that? Like, almost none. And so I think that this book definitely has an effect on the two big guys, because they see art like this in the book. I'm looking at the very last page of the last book, and it's like, the sky is orange and the buildings are green and the clouds are like this, nice cottony pink color, and they're drawn really abstractly. And I'm like, it's beautiful.
It's a study in color theory.
You cannot ignore this if you're one of the big two. You can't see these two guys and go, oh, well, they put out a shitty book.
I've said this before, but to expand on the point that I had made previously, like there's a part of me that cries a little bit. Marvel's really, really good right now, and part of the reason for that is that they have people like Brian Wood writing X-Men right now,
right?
And that's really cool. But it means that those people aren't writing their indie stuff, whereas DC is so shitty, and they're driving all their really great artists away.
Right.
And then you have Lemire doing he's doing Trillium now. They're pushing out these really great guys who are then going out and doing indie stuff or moving over to Marvel.
I'd also like to say that this book is great because a few weeks ago me and Toby were talking about this, and I don't know that we brought this up on the podcast, but it was a panel at one of the it was a panel somewhere, and it was Todd McFarlane, Jerry Ordway, and Len Wein.
There was somebody else there too.
I can't remember who the fourth one was, but they were saying that comics weren't for girls, comics were for men. And I just like to say, you can all go fuck yourselves with something painful, because this is for girls, right? And this is for everybody. That's what's great about it. Yeah. But this is a strong female character carrying her own story and doing it better than fucking 3/4 of the shit that DC is doing, if not 90% of what DC is doing.
Yeah.
So,
and I think this has an effect on the industry. So
absolutely.
I definitely think that you should support creators like that and go pick up books like this because they're important. And
I think the other thing is, when you buy a book like this, you're voting with your dollar.
Yeah,
me and we have a friend who came over and hung out with us the other day, and she's sitting on the couch reading Constantine, and she goes, I don't know why I'm still buying this. It's not good, and it's not going to get any better. And me and Toby just kind of did the whole slow head turn.
Yeah.
And we were like, then why are you doing this? You're supporting a company who you hate to buy something that you don't like.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They're never going to get it any better. They're going to take that money and they're going to say, well, people are buying it.
I believe her response was, I like the character, and I want it to get better.
And
Right.
it's like,
But
your
Unfortunately,
money...
that's the
that's
worst
not
thing you
how it
can
works.
do.
Exactly.
to-
And this is the attitude of a lot of comic book readers. This
That's
does
the
not
wrong
work.
attitude.
This is
Yeah.
the absolute... Your attitude needs to be 180 degrees from that. You need to say, I love this character and I will not watch you do it to them.
Well, and we talk about like the digital age of comics and the end of the single issue and like comic book stores going away and they're less than they were before. And I'm always very critical of comic book stores, and I'm always very critical of comic book the mainstream industry catering specifically to comic book stores, because they're selling to people with that kind of attitude where it's like, I'm a collector, I've bought every single Captain America book for as long as I've been alive. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't care. I'm just going to buy it. And it's like, that doesn't help the industry at all.
Yeah.
So for me, like, if the comic book stores could stay around but somehow lose all of their customers and replace them with new, better customers, like, that's what I would want. But unfortunately, that can't really happen. So like, the death of the comic book store is going to result in a death of those customers.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to blow somebody's mind, tell them that the movie A History of Violence is it's adapted from a comic book.
totally.
Or Road to Perdition is another.
Right,
one.
exactly. It's another great one. Like, what we want is comics like this
Right.
being adapted into other medias and getting people to look at that and go, that was awesome. Oh, hey, there's a comic book based on that.
Yeah.
I should pick that up. What else is good? I like
Yeah.
these kinds of
Fountain
things.
was
Like,
too, although I
really
don't think it's as good an
exploring
example.
the
I
media.
was thinking of From Hell too. That's
Yeah.
it.
And as long as comic
for
books
Vendetta.
are dominated by this 45-year-old white male superhero contingent that just keeps picking up the same titles because they've always gotten them because I like Batman and I'm going to keep buying Batman whether it's good or not, like, that is actively doing damage to comic books as an art form in the long term.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, if a comic is bad, if you don't like it, no matter how much you love the character, you shouldn't be buying that comic.
And
The
you-
next time
Put it down,
you're-
get something that's
Yeah.
good, and then go and tell DC, like, I'm buying this comic instead of your comic,
Right.
and
The
here's
next
why.
time
And the
you're
other
in
thing
your shop-
is a lot of great shops will let you return, like, if you buy a trade paperback because they recommended it to you and you don't like it, like, you should take it back to them and tell them,
Absolutely.
like, this book isn't good and it's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Can I get something else? Because that's just as good as voting with your dollars, like, trying things, finding out that you don't like them, and instead of going, oh well, I guess I just keep this, is like, no, you have to
No.
you have to tell, because when you buy a book from a comic book store, they replace that book. You know, they buy another one to restock it.
Yeah.
If you take your book back, you know, within enough
They're not gonna
time,
buy
they
anymore.
don't have to buy more
Yeah.
because they keep getting returns of these shitty books. And it's like, yeah, that's hard on the comic book store, and a lot of stores won't do returns like that. But it's important for the industry for them to say, like, oh, we recommended a book and it's actually, like, not what people are looking for. Like, you should go and keep finding the things that you like and then use your money on that.
Well, that's it. The next time you're standing in your comic book store and you're looking at the titles there, and we're talking about DC, let's not mix this up, right? And you're going, man, I really love Superman, I really love Hawkman, blah blah blah, but they've been really bad lately. Put the book down. Go and walk over to the indie section and give something new a chance,
Yeah.
right? This is how things grow, and the industry is bigger than it's ever been before, and all we're seeing is growth in amazing areas. Support something, because that really does make a difference.
And then if a true collector says, well, why don't you have this? You can sound smart and say, oh, because that doesn't exist.
I was going to say that this is not exclusively a DC thing. There's a
absolutely
particular
not.
Marvel book that I've been reading I read like the first 8 issues, and I wasn't super enjoying it, and so I've stopped reading it.
Yeah.
And I'm moving on to other things because there's so much other good stuff
Yeah.
out there that I don't have to keep buying that title.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, I feel like I don't have enough time in the day to read all the books that I really want to read.
Exactly.
So I'm not going to waste my time reading something that isn't, you know, something I want to read or talk about. So,
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, vote with your dollar. It
Yeah.
really does matter, because You know, you think to yourself, well, if one person does this, it's not going to make a big deal. But if you do it and somebody else sees, why are you returning that? And you go, because it was bad.
They won't buy it.
They're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we at this point, I think if you're listening to this show, then you're like-minded, you know. DC may not be high on your list, but if it is, and you really love those characters, the best possible thing you can do for them is send a very powerful message to DC that you will not put up with what's being done to them.
Right.
You will not be put up with the bullshit marketing fiascos.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the shenanigans. Yeah, right. Like this whole event bullshit that they keep hopping from back to back to back to back to back. Just
With
tell them
the
that you're not going to
3D
deal with it
covers
anymore
that-
and give your money to somebody else.
Well, you can always get back on the books when they're good, and it's something that Marvel does
Absolutely.
really well. Is they have lots of good entry points. So
it's
like
it's not 1987 anymore. Like if an issue goes by and you don't get it, it's not gone forever. Like
Nobody's
they do
gonna-
reprints, they do trades. Like you
There's
can get
digital
those
copies.
issues.
And nobody's going to judge, like, seriously, 10 years from now, absolutely nobody is going to judge you harshly for not having Jeff Johns run on JLA.
Well, and
I
it's-
guarantee it.
For example, we were talking about Daredevil, and it's like you didn't really enjoy much of the Brubaker or Bendis
No,
run.
I
on
enjoyed it. I
you know,
just
but,
wish that it hadn't been
Right.
so much Frank Miller's run on
But
Daredevil.
you know, like if you read it and you weren't enjoying it, you could easily put it down. And now that Mark Waid has restarted the run, like you
Absolutely,
can
yeah.
pick that up. Like you don't need to read every iteration of the character.
And I think that's the point. Is people need to get out of the idea of. I think a big part of collecting comics is the collecting part of it, and that's cool. There's other things to collect, man.
Yeah.
Like seriously, there's other things to collect.
Bugs.
Like other comic
Stamps.
books. Seriously, it's like
Coins.
it may hurt you not to have all this crap, and you
Pogs.
know, like you have the
Dildos.
first
Beanie
24
Babies.
issues of blah blah blah, the new 52, and it's going to hurt you to not do that. Fill that with something else. You owe it to yourself to read something good.
Yeah.
We all know it's not good. You're telling yourself it's good. You're out there going, I don't think Superman's that bad. But you know in your heart that it's bad. You know it. You know that it's bad.
Yeah. Our message of the day: listen to your heart.
Listen to your... Yes. Yes.
All right, let's do recommendations.
Yeah,
like
let's
Roxanne.
really move on to recommendations.
All right, who wants
So
to start?
speaking, I
yeah.
had a good
Go for
segue
it.
here. Speaking of Daredevil and who does it well, Jeff Loebens himself, Daredevil Legends Volume 1, Daredevil Yellow.
Nice. Oh, I didn't realize they reprinted that as the Daredevil Legends now.
Yeah, well, actually, this was right after. This came out only a couple of years after it came out.
Okay, maybe it was originally printed like this, and now it's in it's its own series.
Just
But
realized that you can split up Daredevil into the Red Evil, which has been cracking me up all day.
the red evil,
The Red
Red
Evil.
Evil.
Daredevil.
Aaron.
The Red Evil.
All right,
I'm shaking my head in dismay.
That's all right.
That's a great indie book that'll be coming out.
The
6
Red
months.
Evil.
The Red Evil.
Toby told me earlier that he doesn't like Parks and Rec, and he thinks that Ron Swanson is the best character.
I didn't say I didn't like Parks and
you
Rec.
did.
I said that Ron Swanson is the only good character on that show,
Which is-
a completely different statement.
I don't see how it is, but I realized at that moment that Toby has no taste, and the good things that he likes are flukes. And that was a very comforting. That was a really comforting.
So you're saying that Ron Swanson is a bad character?
I'm saying that he is like
one of many good characters.
He's
on that
one
show?
of many good characters. He is by far not the best.
I disagree.
He's
think he's
good.
the best,
he's
but
good,
I
but
I
also
think
like
he-
other
my
characters.
favorite
Anyway,
Ron interactions are the ones where he's interacting with other people.
All right.
I think he might be the best, but he's by no stretch the best. Or
The only.
Yeah.
I think the whole
So,
cast is-
Cade, what
Cade,
did
let's
you
see
like
your pitch.
about
Okay, yeah,
Daredevil?
right, sorry. The Red Evil, Yellow.
The Red Evil Yellow.
Wait, that sounds like a Green Lantern book.
Yeah.
The Evil Yellow.
Anyway.
So this is basically, it's Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's retelling of, well, not necessarily retelling, but a look back at the origin. And, you know, kind of fleshes out some things that were never really told, and just gives it a new light. So, I mean, the title is about the yellow suit, which he had originally. And I think it's great. The the Daredevil yellow, Spider-Man blue, Hulk gray stuff that Loeb and Sale did for Marvel is, I think they're all incredible. And we've had Spider-Man blue recommended on the show by Andrew Chard, and I think Daredevil is a great character, and we haven't really talked about him, even though he's been recommended a lot, especially since we had Mannix on the show. And so I think it'd be cool to talk about it. So that's my pitch.
Yeah, it's a good way to get an introduction to the character if you haven't read the origin before, and the art is beautiful, and it's just it's a pretty heartwarming story about. And
it's not Frank Miller Daredevil.
Right.
This is the.
Yeah, he's not getting dragged through the mud, but there is some sad stuff in there. It's kind of about his relationship with his father. So it's pretty good.
Cool. What'd you bring, Chard?
I brought a book from Archaea Press, which we bring a lot of books from, and it's called Strange Attractors. It's by Charles Soule, and the art's by Greg Scott. And Charles Soule also has done a book called 27 that you may have heard of from, I think it's Image, maybe Vertigo, about rock music and people at the age of 20.
Yeah,
it's Image,
yeah.
Okay.
It's Image, yeah.
But this book was the first book I read of his, and it's about it's kind of about this brilliant mathematician who has used the chaos theory and complexity theory and like the butterfly effect, sort of, to see possibilities in the future and affect them by making minor changes. So he's doing something small, but he can sort of calculate and foresee the ramifications of that. So what he's doing is he's healing New York City. It takes place in New York City, and at the beginning, Charles Soule has this great foreword about how much he loves the city of New York and how much of an influence it was on him. The city looks great. The art's fantastic. But what he's doing is he's like making all these minor changes, but everybody thinks he's insane, essentially, because he's this kind of kooky mathematician who's older. And this grad student, who's the main character of the story, is writing a paper about his theories. And it becomes clear early on that because this grad student's interested, the older mathematician is kind of taking him under his wing and training him to be the guy who repairs the net of New York and keeps it from collapsing. It cites some examples of catastrophes that have happened in New York, 9/11 being one of them, and how quickly the city was able to bounce back on its feet is because the city has like a very positive energy about it, and this guy is like tapping into that and helping repair it. So it's there's not like a lot of math in it, but it does have some math concepts, and the art I think is really strong, and it's a really good personal relationship between the older mentor, the younger guy, and the younger guy's girlfriend, and like what the younger grad student is going to do with his life. So there's like a lot of good life questions and kind of slice of life story stuff in here. And I read this book, and just on a whim, I picked it up off the shelf, and it was like, wow, like actually pretty mind blowing. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, I really recommend it. I think it's fun. So that's my pick, Strange Attractors.
That looks good. So I brought this before. I think I brought it in one of my first podcasts.
I think it was like your second or third one, yeah.
Yeah. And so I pitched it then, and I'm gonna let the pitch on the back speak for itself because it's amazing.
What's the title?
I'm going to recommend the five. I'm getting there. Don't hurry me.
All right. You didn't say.
You have no sense of showmanship.
You gotta bring him in. You gotta bring him in.
Lead him
Joe,
in. Lead him in.
Stop talking about yourself in the second person.
So basically, it's science, no longer the realm of the fop, the dandy, or the physicist. Science, no longer the purview of the landed gentry or the moneyed upper classes. Science is today. Science is now. Science is for you. Join Mr. Mark Twain, a.k.a. Samuel Clemens, and Mr. Nikola Tesla, a.k.a. the Master of Lightning, in a white-knuckle thriller as they save the very world. Not recommended for the soft or the sissy, the weak at heart or the dull of mind. The Five Fists of Science. Twain, Tesla, America. You cannot spell action and adventure without TNT.
It's a great pitch on the back.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing, and it's exactly what it says. It is Nikola Tesla building a giant robot and basically kicking the crap out of Thomas Edison, who's a necromancer.
Is this...
It's fucking Matt Fraction.
Yeah, and it's Matt Fraction writing it with...
is this reprinted in color?
This is a color reprint.
I read it in black and white.
I did originally, too, and by
I
the
did
time...
also.
I went back to buy it, and they had done the reprint in color.
I really like the color on this.
The color is amazing. Steven Sanders does the art, and man, this is just like it's a great story. It's a lot of fun. I mean, Tesla and Twain, I think, are two characters from history that have a mythology surrounding them. That, I mean, they're mythical, and. Giant robot, giant steam-powered robot, and kicking the crap out of
Wild
him.
Wild West is what you're saying?
No, God, leave right now. Our friendship has been dissolved.
This is Fraction's first published comic work, right?
If it's not his first, it's very early on.
I think it's his second or his third, because from my understanding, the annotated Man-Tooth was his.
Oh, okay.
Was his first published.
All right. But yeah, it's really early in Matt Fraction's career.
Yeah, it really is. And
yeah, it's cool to see like how he's changed, but what things he still likes to use.
And it's good. It's funny because amid this story, there's plenty of historical detail that's really nice that he put in there. So I think he really does an interesting job of capturing Tesla and Twain. But I just think it's a lot of fun to read. And science.
Science.
So yeah, that's what I got.
All right. I am going to pitch The Black Beetle. It's written and the art's done by Francesco Francavilla. It is set in the 1940s. It's about this... he's not a superhero by any means. He's more of like a detective character, but he dresses like a Black Beetle. He's got a ray gun. He's got dual pistols, and he basically runs around trying to solve these crimes. It's got... The first story is about Nazi soldiers trying to steal an occult item. This like magical artifact, essentially. Mm-hmm. And there's stuff with some crime bosses in here. It's just kind of a great like noir, pulpy type story. It's a lot of fun. It's not trying to be anything it's not. I won't lie to you, there's not this great deep story throughout the whole thing, but it's a lot of fun. You see some guys get punched. There's some great art, and 2 pages in, there's great Nazi soldiers on these like helicopter backpack things.
Now,
I mean,
I was under the impression that this was actually a revival of a classic Golden Age character. Am I wrong about that?
that I don't know. Now
I guess this is printed by Dark Horse, but there's some company, it might be Dynamite, that's been doing a lot of revived characters.
Yeah.
And I thought that this was one of them, but that might have just been my like mistaken knee-jerk impression.
It says the Black Beetle created by Francesco Francavilla, so
I think this is it. Just runs in the vein of the same storytelling. But
the covers are sweet.
Yeah.
The covers look like old pulp movie
posters.
Movie posters.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
There's a cool Darwin Cook cover in here too.
Yeah, the forwards by Darwin Cook. He talks about meeting Francavilla in a bar at a con somewhere.
Cool.
So
that looks really good.
There was a Black Beetle of DC Comics, but this was unrelated.
There you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So my pick this week is, again, something that I thought that I had pitched before, but I guess I just brought it and then pitched something else. So I brought The Plain James by Cecil Castellucci and Jim Rugg. And this was from, I think, about 2007.
Yeah.
And it's about this girl who, she's a teenager. She lives in New York. And she's just on the street, and somebody puts a bomb in a trash can and it blows up near her. And her parents get like super freaked out. And so they move out to the suburbs, to this little small town. And she kind of has to like get over the bomb, which was like a huge traumatic thing for her. And she's in this new town and she's trying to adjust. And so she starts a guerrilla art collective that just like does these guerrilla art installations around the town. And like the adults get really pissed off because they're defacing like public property and stuff. And there's this huge witch hunt to find out who it is. And it's just this like, I mean, it's an all ages book. It's kind of just the story about an ordinary girl in her life adjusting to kind of traumatic changes.
Yeah.
It's really well done. The art is nice. It's very well written. And it's a cool little story.
Yeah, this was part of DC's Minx line, which is what they created for, it was like specifically young adult girls was their target audience. And unfortunately, they ended that line and were like, it wasn't selling very well. But a lot of the books that came out of there were fantastic. This is my favorite one that came out. And there's also a great follow-up. I think it's called Jane's in Love.
I don't know. I picked it up because I really like Jim Rugg from Street Angel, which I had pitched previously. And I found this at a used book shop.
Yeah.
And so I just grabbed it because I had a bunch of credit. And I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's really great. Cecil Castellucci is like a really, really great writer. And so I recommend it as well.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, what do you want to read?
Strange Attractors.
All right, Matt?
Daredevil yellow.
I'm also going to vote for Strange Attractors.
All right. Cade, what do you want? Do you want to break the tie?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to vote for the Plain Janes.
Well,
Did that help?
That's still 2 votes for Strange Attractors and 1 vote for everything else.
Well,
so there's nothing that Cade can vote for that would break a tie.
And I was going to say the Black Beetle is more up my alley than anything else here, but I really want to read The Five Fists of Science, so I'm going to cast my vote for that.
Okay. So that means Strange Attractors for next week.
Yeah.
And like every week, read all the books. They're all good recommendations. Got a lot of good books this week.
I was going to say, well, now the Black Beetle didn't get any votes, but neither did the Five Fists of Science if I vote for that.
Well, I'll tell you what, you can have 2 votes this week as long as you vote for 2 different books.
All right. I'm going to vote for the Black Beetle and Five Fists of Science.
All right.
There you go.
So read every book.
Every book got a vote.
And we'll see you next week. We'll read Strange Attractors, and please leave us an iTunes review and like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and all that stuff.
Rate us on iTunes or Stitcher if you use that. Or...
Nobody uses Stitcher.
Let's get make sure our MySpace page has lots of good views.
Oh no, friends!
Live
journal. Check my live journal.
Check our live journal. Our
Give me a
Zenga.
live journal, go.
Follow my Zenga.
You can find each of us on Twitter.
No.
You can find some of us on Twitter.
Yeah,
I'm on Twitter,
I don't
Joe
have a
Mazo. And also, if you go to our site, leave a comment. Tell us that we suck. Tell us that we rule.
You can reach us at our website.
Suggest a book to us.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
Send us a
Definitely.
We'd love to not pick your book. I mean, no, we'd love to hear what you're reading.
Well, part of the reason that we do
We'd
this...
love to hear what you recommend because we all know what each other reads.
Yeah, I mean,
So
part of the reason...
tell us to read something that we wouldn't normally read by ourselves.
Yeah, part of the reason we do this is because I really love getting recommendations. So I'd love to get some recommendations from listeners. And thanks for listening, guys.
Yep.
We'll see you next time.
Outro music.
Yay.
Go.
Bye.